All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Apex for Lunch. We are being recorded and we're being live streamed. Excuse me. So this is the April 28th version. Let's get started. We'll start as we often do with the pandemic. Just quickly, you can see that since the beginning of this year, we've added almost 200 million more infected folks around the world, but there's only been about 700,000 additional deaths worldwide, which says the pandemic is out there, the virus is out there, but the more deadly impact of the virus, remember we had tens of thousands of people dying. Here in El Paso, we had trailers outside acting as morgues because we didn't have enough space to put the dead bodies. The impact of wearing masks, the impact of social distancing, the impact of people getting infected and surviving, and people getting their shots and staying healthy is starting to play out. And Dr. Fauci said yesterday that the pandemic is moving to a new phase, and that phase is we can live with this. We're not seeing the death rates. We still have to continue. It's like the flu. I get a flu shot every year. I get a pneumonia shot on a regular basis. I get those shots to keep me healthy. And we're going to have to do that for some time to come. So we have seen the numbers are still important, the impact is still important, but they're tapering off, and that's good news. We've got a couple, three things in chat. All right. Welcome aboard. I'm going to skip the local variant. We're doing okay. The numbers have sort of peaked up a little bit. There's another chart that Deanna, and I want to take a moment here to say thank you, Deanna, in front of everybody. Thank you. Deanna makes this all work. And so she puts the slide deck together and away we go. But you can see here in this wonderful chart from the New York Times, you can see how the timing has gone with the new infections. And you can see how we had the peak back in 2020 and then last year. And you can see that there's been a small peak just recently here in El Paso, but that has tapered out a little bit. And so if we can avoid those high peaks, or when we see the high peaks, it's infections, but people aren't going to the hospital, people aren't dying, that's okay. It's just people are going to lose a day's work. They got a bad cold or something, we would prefer that it not happen, but like the flu, every year people catch the flu, people miss work. We have to put that in our planning and go forward with it. Shanghai I mentioned this last time, they were closing down part of Shanghai. They were trying to do it in pieces so they wouldn't shut down the whole thing. They've shut down the whole thing. The government just felt that it was totally out of control, and they just locked it up. They put in chain link fence, and they fenced off areas. Some people were thrown out of their houses so other people could be put away in their houses and sequestered there. So it's pretty bad. It has been pretty bad. Some of the plants are trying to work, but labor has been real scarce. And so much of the manufacturing in and around Shanghai and Shenzhen, it isn't getting done. And so the ports there, with the very limited people that can show up for work, are running at about 20%, and the movement to and from the docks is very much stop and go. So right now, it looks like what's going to happen supply chain wise is we're going to see a slowdown in ships coming out of China, which means the flow of materials out of China into the marketplace is going to dip again. And we don't know for exactly how long, but there'll be a downturn and then it will come back up. And so we may see another one of these things where the ship levels drop again at the various harbors around the world. And so the unloading and loading times start to go back up, but then the ships get backlogged in China, waiting to get unloaded and loaded there. And we see the blockages and the slowdown in the supply chains. Where it is and how it's happening changes and moves, but it doesn't go away. And so we're probably in for another bumpy ride well into the end of this year. Just to keep you involved and updated in case you lost your daily feed, the Ever Forward is moving. That's the one that ran aground in Chesapeake Bay. Now, I love this picture. Deanna found this. It's a great picture because the reason you see all that orange paint, that's the bottom seal. That's put on the ship when the ship was made. And generally that doesn't get changed. Maybe once every 15, 20 years, they'll go down, they'll scale the barnacles off and touch it up. But these ships are made to float. And you can tell when you see that orange paint, that says that ship isn't floating. That ship is sitting on the bottom. So what they did was they took a lot of the units off, as I said they would have to do. They unloaded them using cranes and dropped them down onto barges. And then they took the barges back to the dock area in Baltimore where the ship was loaded originally. And they set them up. Then once they got the ship to float, they pulled it out and got it back out into the channel so that it was in deep water again. They sent divers down, they inspected the hull for damage to make sure that there was no substantive damage. They didn't want to load the ship up and have it sink at the dock. So they inspected all of that and gave it a relatively clean bill of health and moved it back to the dock in Baltimore and began the reloading process. It should be ready to sail. If it hasn't already sailed this week, I haven't checked, I didn't check yesterday, but it should be sailing again this week. So for the second time, we've been sort of caught up in what in the world's going on with these Ever ships. They carry a huge amount of freight and move a lot of freight around the world, but we're beginning to see that the supply chain is not necessarily smooth. We look at it as a chain, but it doesn't go straight line a lot of the time. But if we look at it in terms of the rules of 80-20, 80% of the time it's flawless, 20% of the time it's pretty flawed. The port facilities, the LA wait times for ships, for the larger ships, the ones like the Ever Forward, the Ever Given, that's 24 to 28 days. But again, they're not sitting at anchor. They're coming out of the ports in different parts of the year, and then they're steaming at slow speed so that they're with the timing, they come in on their due date and they're going in. They're not sitting at anchor outside for a month, but they're moving more slowly across the ocean. The good news in that is it takes less fuel. Now the smaller ships, they're able to come and go much more quickly. The wait time to get to a dock is 2 to 8 days, and they can pretty much call their shots when the time they're leaving one port till the time they get to the next port. They can time that out, and there's not the difference is the the Ever Given has the capacity for 24,000 20-foot containers. The smaller ships are handling maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 of those containers. So considerably smaller in length and breadth. And so it's easier to fit them in. It's easier to have cranes. Doesn't take as long to unload and reload. Miami and Baltimore are having wait times up to 48 hours, but trucking away from the dock is delaying moves up to 7 days. So they're able to get it off the ships, but then it sits on the dock waiting for the trains or waiting for the trucks to move it. And trucking away from the ports everywhere in the country is still an issue. Trains are moving a bit better, but the ports are still congested. And if you sat in at our PDM last week, we were talking about, Ray was talking about the things that the trains are doing, moving through Las Cruces or through Santa Teresa, and how they're working to clear up a lot of the train cargo coming out of the ports, getting it out as far as Santa Teresa, and then getting it broken out and on up to Chicago or onto the East Coast. So that's working and working better. If we have the slowdown, what's going to happen? Well, that'll slow down, but hopefully they'll clean up some of the remaining issues and prepare themselves, because as soon as things get better in China and we start seeing that movement again, then rather than just having it slam through, how can we get it and move it more quickly and not go through that congestion? Trucking capacity around the country is improving. It's not as bad. We hit a low of 12.5% of the normal capacity for trucks. And that's pre-pandemic. They're comparing to a number pre-pandemic. In 2020, we only had 12.5% of that rolling stock actually rolling. So 87.5%, 7/8 of it was sitting still. And that's changed. And we see that now that it's up to 58.7% at the beginning of April, and it has improved even more in April, but I haven't been able to get any of the numbers. I'll get numbers again the 1st of May. So the trucking capacity is improving. More truck drivers are going to work. There's less fear of the pandemic, and people need money, so they're getting out, they're going to work, they're driving, and we're seeing freight moving. As I was talking to Deanna before the session started, my wife and I drove to Austin on Sunday and then drove home yesterday. And I've got to tell you, there are a whole lot of trailer truck semis on I-10 going in both directions. So there's a lot of trucks rolling out there. Planning and execution problems. This came from one of my students who said, "Chet, there's an issue here." And I said, "What's the problem?" And she said, "You teach us that we should do it this way, and my boss says we should do it this way. Why is that?" So what we teach is, at the master schedule level, we set time fences. We set the demand time fence and the planning time fence. And the demand time fence is the point in time where we say, we're no longer going to consider forecast as demand. We're only going to look at orders that we have to fulfill. Now, those could be stock orders that we have to fill to ship through distribution, or it could be customer orders if we're in a short cycle make to order environment, or assembly orders if we're in an assemble to order environment. But there's a period of time where we say, that's it. We can't if we haven't sold the forecast, if we haven't filled that up, we're not going to fill it up. Forget whatever's left over. We're only going to focus on customer orders, or we're only going to focus on orders that we have to fill. And so that normally is a short time frame, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere in that level, for many companies. At which we say, the beginning of the month, if you're starting the month of May, and that's going to happen on Monday, and you're sitting there and you've got forecast that's loaded for week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If you haven't sold the forecast already for week 1, when are you going to sell it? Are you reserving capacity for that forecast? But at some point in time, you say, wait, I don't need it, because that's not going to happen. It didn't happen. Therefore, I don't need to worry about it. And that's what the demand time fence is there for. We're only going to look at real demand, not planning demand from the forecasting perspective. Marketing and sales had the chance to sell that capacity. If they didn't sell it, it's going to go unused. And so that's where we sit with the demand time fence. Now, the planning time fence is longer. It's out there. The planning time fence has to be out as far out as we need to go so that we can order material, get material in, and make the longest lead time products. So if you're ordering chips for a motherboard from Kazakhstan and it's 46 weeks, I had that. Your planning time fence needs to be out 46 weeks or 47 weeks. I like to give it one more week. When I set up a system, I like to give it one more week so that somebody can put a forecast out there, and you got a week to look at the forecast before you have to start planning and taking action in order to get the product ready. Because if it's a 46-week lead time, you're going to need at least 46 weeks. You should have an extra few days there to make sure you got your plan together. So the planning time fence is out there a little bit further. When we're teaching this, we normally say, well, it's out there 8 to 12 weeks, somewhere in that time frame. And so we're looking out a couple of months in the planning time fence. So inside that demand time fence, we're only considering the open orders on the system, and we don't want to make change. The rule that we have is this is the frozen section. And inside that frozen section, we have to go to upper management and get upper management to say, yes, we're going to make a change. Well, why do we do that? Well, because I don't know about you, but when I was master scheduling, the sales guys would call and they go, hey, Chet, really, come on. I got this client, and they're looking for, they're just looking for a couple of hundred pieces or maybe 1,000 pieces. Okay, so, can't you get that squeezed in this week and just get it done? I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to take that much time. Yeah, but while I'm working on that 1,000 pieces for them, I've got General Motors sitting over here. I got Ford over there. I've got Briggs and Stratton over there. I got all these other customers that I have promised and that I have put capacity in place for them. And now I'm going to take that capacity and make it for somebody else who only wants a couple of 1,000 pieces. There's no money in this. Why am I doing it? So the sales guy looks good, or so the sales guy can get another sale. And so, no, I'm not going to do that for the sales guy. If the sales guy feels that it needs to happen, I want him to go up to the vice president of sales and say, Harold, this needs to happen. I need your help because Chet's not going to do it for me. And then at that point, Harold will walk across the hall to the vice president of operations, Joe, and say, Joe, Chet's being nasty to one of my sales guys, and I really want this done. And Joe says, wow, Chet's protecting the big customers. Which one do you want to irritate? Only they didn't talk that nicely. They talked a little more frankly. But anyway, and so if Harold and Joe decided that, yeah, this was the right thing to do, then either one of their secretaries would come to my desk and pay me a visit and say, Harold and Joe met and they want you to do this. Okay, I'll do it. Can I do it? Yes, I can do it. But when I do it, I'm destroying something. I'm changing inside an area. We have picked a product, we picked orders, we put orders in place because that's what we do inside the demand time fence. The people out in the warehouse are picking and pulling material. They're getting it queued up. They're getting it ready to go in. We've made allowances for the right number of people for the right number of hours. And now all of a sudden we're going and we're saying, okay, slide that stuff out of the way because we want this to be hot. We want it to go in front. Can we do it? Yes. But we want to resist making those changes. Inside the planning time fence, we consider changes in mix, but not in volume. If we set the volume and we say we're going to make 1,000 pieces a day, and we can make XYZ products, it doesn't matter much if we do all X's, if we do all Y's, all Z's, some mix of X, Y, and Z, but we don't want to do, or we can't do more than 1,000 a day because we only bought material to do 1,000 a day. We only ordered material for that amount. So inside that planning time fence, we're looking at changes in mix, not in volume. And inside the demand time fence, we're resisting change because we've already started making product. And anything we need to change is going to have stuff taken out of the line, other stuff put into the line, and it causes tumult and it breaks the flow. And that's where problems start because then we start missing numbers. So the volume for all of this is set by the sales and operations plan. So if you want to change the volume inside the planning time fence, you have to go back to the sales and operations plan and say, we want to change the volume. The master scheduler says we only have 1,000 a day planned for this. We need 1,500 a day. Well, yeah, but but for the last 6 or 8 weeks, we've been planning on 1,000 a day, and that's what we ordered. We ordered material to support that. If we have to go out and order more material, then that's going to be the problem. So this is why we teach this and why we want this to be our operating system. So the ERP systems flow the information from the S&OP through the master schedule to MRP. And if we follow the plan, everything moves in concert and the orders ship on time and we have the planned levels of inventory. It works. When I set this up, the first company I worked for where Harold and Joe worked, and Harold was the vice president of sales and Joe was the vice president of operations. And it worked. And we were 98% on time by customer want date. And it worked very well. But we had to be resistant to change. We had to work the plan. We had the plan, everybody approved the plan, we made the plan, and we reaped the benefits. And as long as we stayed that way, it worked. It is the frozen zone. In forecasting the periods where no changes can be made to work orders based on changes in demand. This provides stability. That's how Apex looks at it. That's what we teach. So why do we change? Why do we let customer orders enter the system for at-once delivery when there's no inventory? And I'm interested, how many of you just click the chat button or raise your hand and just, how many of you run into this on a regular basis where, forget it, we're going to do it, get it, go, fly the parts in here, let's get it started, let's get it out the door. How many of you run into that? Is it only a couple of people? All right. The order may have been planned for future delivery, but it's being moved in to at once. Great, thank you. Or it isn't planned at all, but the customer needs the parts. So what are we going to do? There are all kinds of stories about why this happens. We had a fire and lost our inventory. Yeah. When I was working at a company here in El Paso, uh, and we shipped a hot shipment out to a company in Denver, and we put it on FedEx ground, uh, and it was sort of a hot shot shipment, and we were tracking it. And I came home and I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and they had video of a FedEx truck burning up in Albuquerque. And sure enough, it was our hot shot shipment was on that truck. And so we had screwed up our schedule to ship that thing. We shipped it, and then it burned up in transit. And so the next day we were right back at it, carving these things out of wooden blocks, I think. But that was one. Our customers bought all of our inventory and they need more. That's a great story. How can we make more and get it to them in a timely way so they can make more money and we can make more money? And we had a quality issue and scrapped the parts. That's not a great story. Now, the quality issue wasn't with our parts, but with other parts that were getting met with our parts, and they ended up scrapping. And so they had to replace that order. We had planning failure. That happens where a planner just missed a part or wasn't paying attention particularly, and boom, it came as a surprise. So we have these things. So what do we do? What do we do? How do we deal with this? We need to make sure that the request has been approved by our management, first of all. And this isn't being mean. This isn't being unkind. This is our job. And if we don't, if this isn't serious enough from the top management's perspective, then we're not going to do it. But if top management says it's serious enough, then they'll say, yes, do it. Harold will talk to Joe. Joe will come to me. I'll get it done. And we get that approval, and Joe does, or Joe's secretary comes down to Chet. Joe says, okay, done. Do we have all the material to build the required parts? Do we have shortages? How many can we build? Because maybe a couple hundred pieces, a couple thousand pieces will get them started. But then the third question here is the one that's a little bit difficult, but as planners and schedulers, this is the one we really need to think about. What will be affected by the changes? If we do this, who are we displacing? Because maybe we're adding some overtime, getting some people to stay over for another shift or something like that. But then what else is going to change? What else is getting moved off the line so this can get moved onto the line? Laws of physics, you can't have two things occupying the same space at the same time. So one of them's going to have to get out of the way. How will they impact other customers? And how can we minimize that impact? This is where we make this is where we make the decisions that impact, one, the finances of our company, two, the reputation of our company. And that reputation is in two ways. Yes, they're agile and they can react relatively quickly, and they meet their promises. And so what do? I've done things like I've called customer A because customer B needed capacity and I needed to get some work done, and say, customer A, if I can absorb the extra cost, can I break our monthly shipment into 4 weekly shipments? And I will ship a weekly quantity 4 times and keep you in parts, and I won't charge you the extra transportation charges. Will that work for you? And when I got an approval from them to do that, then that gave me, because then I didn't have to make everything that they needed in one block. I could make a quarter of it in a weekly block, and that freed up capacity so that I could put something else in the line. And so then the question is, well, who paid for the extra transportation? Well, the company that came in and said, we need these we need to get these now, and they bugged our management team. My response to the management team was, this is going to have excess transportation charges added to it. Go ahead, done. And so we can do that. We can work through this. We can plan our way. We can execute our way through these things. But we have to have the attitude of, when it's approved, I need to do these things, and these are the things that are going to be affected. And I need to keep everybody in the loop so that everyone understands what's going on. It's a communication exercise. But if we can do that, then we're successful, and we're agile, we're meeting the customer's demands, and we're able to help out customers that need it and have honest needs. Our attitude: this is the time to do your best work. Everyone's watching. Generate some ideas, seek input from operations, work together to create a win. Make it work. That's the key. So, what would you like to discuss next as we wrap up? Here are some ideas that came to us this week, getting ready for this one. How and when are we going to start to reduce lead time? A great question. I think we can talk about that next month. Talk a little bit about supply chain strategies. We can do that. And then we've got some other things. HR issues. Wow, the legalization of marijuana in New Mexico. How are we going to deal with that? That's great, but I think that's a PDM topic. And I think what I would like to do is put together a roundtable for one of our hour-long meetings and have that discussion. What do you think? Give me your feedback. Let me know. Okay. And what do we? If you came to the PDM last week and you listened to Ray talk, his answer is, if they have a problem getting product from Juarez to El Paso, have them ship it through Santa Teresa. They're expanding the Santa Teresa crossing again. And I remember the days when we used to worry if we drove out there, it might be shut down. You can drive all the way from your park in the south side of Juarez and drive all the way out to San Jeronimo and get there, and it was shut up. You know, you couldn't get through, and you had to drive all the way back and then still wait in the line to get across. We've come a long way, baby, and they're going to do another fairly significant expansion there, bring the stuff and cross it into New Mexico. The craziness stops at the state line sometimes. Okay, so thank you so much for attending. Have a great week. There are classes May 14th, Planning Demand and S&OP Management, and then some others out in the future. Check these slides out and see if you can sign up for a class. All right, have a great week, a great month. We'll be back next month. And as I said, we'll take your ideas and we'll go forward from there. All right, and happy Mother's Day from Patricia Wickham. Patricia, happy Mother's Day to you. Bye.